honestly, dude, I'm not even gonna lie. It wasn't even Xanax because Xanax isn't a thing anymore. It was pressed. It's something else. Like I don't even know what I was taking at this point. You know what I mean? It's man-made. It's some dude in his basement pressing pills, but we would get bags of them, like large bags of pills. And that's where it started. I was just surrounded by it. Pills were something that I've been taking since I was 14, 15. It was so normal to me. I didn't think, I was like, doctors give these out. It's Xanax. You know what I mean? How could it be bad?
Holics.com, in partnership with Heart Support and the Global Recovery Initiatives Foundation, is proud to present High Notes, a podcast about addiction and recovery in the music industry. I'm your host, James Shotwell. My guest this episode is Jack Kays. Jack is a recording artist currently signed to Columbia Records, whose debut EP is available now. Jack is originally from Ohio. Though he lives in Washington, D.C. now, most of the story we'll tell today takes place in the Buckeye State. Jack tells me how an early prescription for Xanax led him down a path to not only using prescription drugs, but also selling them to his classmates. As his problems worsened, Jack found support in those around him, and thankfully, he found the strength to make a positive change in his life. In this conversation, Jack recounts the darkest days that led him to get sober, and everything that he's learned along the way. But before we get to all that, we start our conversation where we start every episode of our show, with me asking Jack Kays just how long he's been sober.
Yeah, I have a time frame. Me and my girlfriend actually, when we listened to the podcast, we tried to calculate when it would be. I think it's around 2 years now I've been sober.
Many people new to Jack's music may not realize the life he was leading just a few short years ago. I'll let him explain.
My electricity was cut off. I didn't have water in my house. I had no money. I lost my job. And you know, I wasn't talking to my parents. My relationship with my girlfriend was failing. And I was living in my friend's mom's basement. Yeah, and it was just really evident to me at that time that I was going down the wrong path. A lot of it's really hazy for me because I mean, I did love to drink. That's more of a recent thing that I stopped doing, but my main thing was Xanax. So I have a lot of memory loss from that time.
Jack is only 20 years old when this part of his story is happening. So at the age of 20, his addiction to Xanax was so great that he was losing track of time. There are entire portions of his life he does not remember, and though people can tell him about his behavior and his actions during those times, the picture is never clear for him. It's just a blurry part of his life.
I would say what really was a turning point for me, it was two people. It was my mom and my girlfriend that really, I think, kind of set me straight. My mom didn't know what was happening. She was just trying to get me out somehow. And she was trying to get me to go to culinary school. And my girlfriend was in DC going to school where I am now, living with her. And she didn't really understand the full scope of what was happening until much later. But at the time, she was begging me to stop selling and taking pills. And she was basically saying, if you don't stop, our relationship has to end. She's not a citizen, so if she's caught up with me, she can violate the visa. There's a lot of factors there.
Mm-hmm.
So she's basically saying, I have to cut ties with you if you don't get your shit together. And my mom is just extremely worried and trying to get me to like find some sort of structure in my life. It was a couple of years time where, I mean, immediately after I graduated high school, I moved out of my parents' house. It was kind of a situation where I got in a pretty bad fight with my parents, and they were kind of forced to kick me out. And I moved into a house with my friends, and we were just making music, and we were really like focused on that. And obviously I knew that one day I was going to do it. I just didn't know how I was going to get there. And in the middle of all that, you know, we're trying to make money and we're trying to have a good time, and I started selling a lot of different kinds of drugs in a lot of large quantities, and I'm surrounded by all these things, and I'm depressed and I'm anxious. So, you know, I start taking them myself, start losing the money. It starts eating away at me. And my mom and my dad at this point, where we have a terrible relationship when we're not talking about a lot, but they can see that something's going on, I'm assuming. And they started reaching out to me and just like, yeah, it didn't work for a couple years. You know, they're just like, trying to get me to go to school, trying to get me to move back home, trying to get me to do this, trying to get me to do that. And I don't want to do anything. I was just kind of keeping to myself, pulled away in the house.
I think Jack recognizes how lucky he is to have the people in his life that care about him and want the best for him. But a thing you learn as you try to get sober is that no amount of external love or support will make you change your life. The only way you're going to get clean is if you decide to do that. It has to be your decision. And here, Jack tells me about when he made that choice.
Yeah, my mom picked me up from my house one day. I don't remember where we were going. I have no idea what we were going to do. I'm pretty sure I had just lost my license. I'm pretty sure she was going to like take me to go get groceries or something. I was in a really bad position. I didn't have any food at the house, and she was going to take me on a grocery shopping trip, I think.
Mm.
And there was like a community college like right across the street from where I was living. And at the community college there's a culinary school, and she drives past and she brings up school again, and I'm like, no. And we go get groceries. I don't know what happened while we were going to get groceries. I couldn't tell you, but on the way back when we passed the school again, she asked me one more time. She was like, would you ever think about going to college? And I was just like, roll me in, and we signed up for culinary school right there. And I always say culinary school was like my rehab for me. We can get into that later, but that was a huge part of like finding my bearings.
What we have here is a perfect example of somebody suffering from addictive behaviors that finds a positive way to channel their energy. Jack knew that if he focused on cooking, if he got very into the culinary arts, then maybe he could keep his mind busy enough to stay off drugs. Of course, it was never going to be that easy, but it was still a step towards something good.
I was working in a restaurant at the time. Well, I wasn't working in a restaurant at the time. I lost my job, but all the jobs that I had worked up to then were working in restaurants. So I was familiar with the food industry. It was the only place that I could see myself working other than in the music industry. So the way that happened is another separate story. Like the hospital messed up my birthing process a lot. They gave my mom a bunch of the wrong drugs, and she went into cardiac arrest, and I was technically born dead. And my parents sued the hospital and won the lawsuit, and then put the money into an education fund. So when my mom saw how bad I was struggling, she said, you can use this money to go to school if you want to. And while you're in school, you can get back on your feet. In my head, I'm like, I don't want to go to school. I don't want to give up music. I don't want to stop living life the way that I'm living. You know what I mean? And culinary school, I was already working in a restaurant. And if I went to culinary school, I would end up working less hours than I was working in a restaurant, because culinary school was only like 2 or 3 classes a week. And it was only 9 months long. And I was like, this is my way out. And it happened to be. I'm really lucky that it was.
I know this sounds like a very happy moment in Jack's life, and it certainly is, but it was also incredibly difficult. By this point in his story, Jack is both using and selling drugs. It's safe to assume that most of the people in his immediate circle are doing the same, which means a lot of his life revolves around drug use of some kind. The decision to enter culinary school meant that Jack was going to have to change those relationships and change the people that he surrounded himself with, which is never easy to do.
I think a huge part of it, I'm still friends with a lot of people that I was friends with on a very surface level. And when I started to make the decision to try to like go cold turkey, not do anything and not be associated with that, not sell, not do anything, I was really worried that I was going to lose my friends and that people would think I was weird or anything. So to deal with that, I just kind of cut everybody off. I moved out of the house that I was in. I moved in with somebody that I hadn't been living to previously. I just like cut ties, you know what I mean? A lot of people didn't hear from me for a while. I think like the biggest thing for me was like establishing a routine. Like I was in a lot of positions where I couldn't really be high. You know what I mean? Like I really realized how bad I was doing and how much shit I was messing up, destroying my relationships and losing job after job. I have my dog, sometimes I would forget to feed my dog. Like sometimes I'd forget to walk her, forget to take her outside, destroying the things around me, not even thinking about destroying myself. And I think that was enough for me to be like, I can't, you know what I mean? I can't do that. I need to find a way to like stay grounded. And so what that became was cooking all the time and like working and being in culinary school, I couldn't be high all the time, and it kind of gave me like some structure.
Jack is touching on classic recovery behavior. When we decide to get clean and quit drinking or using drugs, we have to fill that time with something else. We have to find something hopefully productive to do instead. And for Jack, cooking was the answer.
I used to just be doing nothing high all the time. Like, what do I do now? You know, I'm somebody who struggles with anxiety and depression a lot. I'm diagnosed bipolar. And I think like I really started feeling it when I got off Xanax. Xanax is an anti-anxiety medication. And I remember like the first like year being sober, the little bits that I remember, because I think it's like brain damage or something. I barely remember most of the time that I was trying to fight, that I was trying to get off of them. But like my panic attacks would get really bad. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I was just in a terrible, terrible place.
Recovery is a commitment that we make every single day. For some, it's a commitment that they make several times a day. Whenever that nagging feeling creeps up and your brain tries to convince you that the best thing you could possibly do is get a fix of that thing you're trying to avoid, that's when you have to recommit yourself. And when you're first starting your journey in recovery, that commitment is hard to make. You almost can't believe that you have to make it again and again because your brain fights so hard against the idea of changing your behavior. But thankfully, at least for Jack, there were signs that kept him on the right path.
I'm somebody who really believes that the universe will give you a sign. And there was a couple times when I was stopping, that I would go out and search for pills and like try to, you know, hit up somebody that I used to buy them from. Like there was one time in particular that my girlfriend was in Europe and I was sober at the time, and I was going to go fly and see her in Geneva, and I was super excited. But the night before I was so anxious. I couldn't keep my shit together. So I hit up my old dealer, and I'm literally like begging. And it was probably like 6 months or a year that I had actually been off pills by this point. And I'm begging, and he's like, I don't have anything. It's not that he won't come and give it to me. It's not that he can't. It's just that he doesn't have anything. And I think that was a really sobering moment for me, because I was like a day away from seeing the person that I'm trying to get sober for, you know what I mean? And I'm so anxious and I'm so caught up in myself that I'm begging my old dealer for pills. Like, I think that was a really, really intense and like moment where I was like, I need to chill.
The thoughts and experiences that Jack is describing here are common for people in recovery, and they're part of the reason why people need other people to help them through this process. We have to be able to lean on one another. Even if you don't choose to go to meetings, you still need people in your corner, as Jack explains here.
I didn't go to meetings. I went cold turkey, and I went to therapy for a little bit, and then it was mainly just like really cold turkey. And at the time I was trying to save money back up for I was in culinary school, and I would get out of class and I would go straight to work. And I was trying to, like, I had a goal in mind. I was like, I want to get to a point that when I get out of school, can pay my bills by myself. I wanted a certain number for my wage, and I knew in my head that if I wanted to do that, I couldn't be on Xans. Xans is like, you can't function on Xanax.
Yeah.
You just can't. Like, there's no sense in your head. There's no anxiety. And I think like as much as anxiety sucks, anxiety is also like what keeps us out of bad situations, you know?
You may think that sobriety is what led Jack to therapy, but it turns out he's actually been going to therapy regularly since he was 14 years old. Now, most 14-year-olds don't want to speak to adults of any kind about anything personal, but Jack realized it was a necessity early on.
When I was 14, 15, I was cutting myself, and I was really, really depressed. I started really, really young with mental illness. I remember feeling anxiety for the first time when I was in third grade, like actually feeling anxiety. I think like maybe I was 15. I started seeking it out from my parents really, really intensely. I was like, I really want to go to therapy. I don't like the way I feel. And from that age, like my therapists, I've had many different therapists. I've had a lot of terrible experience at therapy. But the one thing that I've always heard is that my therapists say, wow, you're really in tune with your head and you really know what you're thinking and how you're feeling. But like, it's a good thing too, because it really makes me feel like I know what I need and I know what I want. And I'll also give that a huge, like, that's a huge part of me getting sober, is that I've always thought it was really, really important to like assess what you feel and assess how are you affecting the people around you?
Some people believe addicts are selfish because they spend all their time thinking about themselves and their next high. But the truth is that most addicts would do just about anything to get away from themselves. In fact, they look at using drugs as a means of escape. It's an opportunity to unplug from the reality that is being you.
Yeah, and it's also like, dude, like you spend so much time escaping yourself, you're never gonna get away.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna be here as long as you're alive. I'm like, I want to enjoy my life. I know everybody does. So why would I try to escape myself? I just want to like figure it out rather than escape it.
Jack has spent this conversation telling us about his attempts to overcome a Xanax addiction. But you may be surprised to learn that his relationship with the drug didn't start off this way.
I got prescribed medication while I was on meds most of my way through high school.
Mm-hmm.
And I got prescribed medication for the first time when I was in my freshman year, and I was on pills all the way through high school for many different things. I took mood stabilizers and antidepressants, anti-anxiety meds, and folic acid stuff, all these different, you know what I mean? Pills to go to sleep, pills to get myself to wake up, pills to focus, all that. So pills were like extremely normal to me, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I had friends who took Valium. I had friends who had Xanax prescriptions. Like pills just never seemed like something that was bad. So when I got kicked out of my parents' house when I was 18, like I moved into the house with all my friends where we were making music. I was in a friend group and we were all selling drugs and we're all trying to look to make more money. And so, you know, it starts out with weed.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
And then it moved, and you know, like we're selling weed for a little bit, it starts to get a bigger weight, and then it starts to be stuff like Percocet and Vicodin, and we started selling pills. And then like the Xanax era came along where it wasn't even like, honestly, dude, I'm not even gonna lie, it wasn't even Xanax, because Xanax isn't a thing anymore. It was pressed, it's something else. Like I don't even know what I was taking at this point. You know what I mean? It's man-made, it's some dude in his basement pressing pills, but we would get bags of them, like large bags of pills. And that's where it started. I was just surrounded by it. Pills were something that I've been taking since I was 14, 15. It was so normal to me. I didn't think, I was like, doctors give these out. It's Xanax. You know what I mean? How could it be bad? And it's so fucked up to me that it's so normalized and it's such a dangerous thing.
Most people who get into selling drugs don't do so with big ambitions. Maybe they're helping their friends get a little weed or sharing their Adderall with classmates. But it's incredibly easy to ascend through the ranks and start dealing large amounts of drugs. Maybe you started with a joint here or there, but before you know it, you're picking up pounds. And not long after, you're meeting the guy who gets the pounds of weed from somebody even more dangerous.
Yeah, escalate. And I didn't have any money at the time, and I was also 18, and like looking at that amount of money seemed really fucking cool. Like I had thousands of dollars every single day going through my hands. That felt cool when I was 18. Like it felt sick. I was the guy with pills, and like I was cool, and you know, I was just out of high school making more money than any of my like it felt dope.
I think Jack's life today is even better. Now that he's clean and sober, he's still cooking and loving his girlfriend, but he's also a major label recording artist with fans all over the world. He's living a life he would have never been able to pursue if he hadn't gotten off drugs. And I wanted to know if there has been any point in the last 2 years where he became aware of what was happening. When he took a step back, thought about where he'd been, where he was, and where he was headed, and really just lost himself in the idea of what he was doing.
All the time. I mean, first, like, I wish I could show you a side by side of my living situation and like how clean I keep my house versus like how clean I keep my whole apartment right now versus how clean I used to not be able to keep my 9 square foot bedroom. Like, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I think the biggest thing is like I get called well spoken now. I've gotten called that quite a few times. People will say I'm mature, and people will say, oh, you seem so intentional. Never in my life would I have thought that 2 years ago, you know? I think that's like well spoken, bro. I've said some of the dumbest shit in my life on Xans. I used to like, and I'm somebody who used to lose their temper. I'm somebody who used to not be able to control their emotions. I've yelled at coworkers, walked out of jobs, thrown plates at walls. Like, you know, I've done some crazy shit. And to be able to help people and to be able to be well spoken and tell my story in a good way, like never in my life would I have thought that I could be able to do this, you know?
As my time with Jack runs out, I wanted to make sure to ask him about temptations and cravings. Specifically, when was the last time he experienced each?
The last time that I was present, it was when I had first moved out of I'm gonna call it the toxic house. When I first moved out of the toxic house and tried to get into a new situation. One of my friends that had been living at that other house with me needed a place to stay, and he didn't have anything. He was, you know, like he didn't have money. He had to leave the house too. A lot of us were getting evicted from that house, so I was like, you can come and crash on my couch for a couple weeks. I just got a new house, you know. And he knew that I was trying to get away from, I think so. I'm not really sure how clear it was, but I remember one time he showed up and he was really, really high and he was on Xan. I was just mad, you know what I mean? I had worked so hard to separate myself from this. And the way that I figured out that he was on Xan, he was acting really weird the whole night. And I was like, what the fuck's going on? I'm like, what? Like, no, this is weird. And then he's like, I'm gonna go to the bathroom. And I'm like, all right. And the bathroom's upstairs. There's only one bathroom in the house and it's right next to my bedroom. And I'm like, he's up in the bathroom for like 15 minutes. And I go up in the bathroom, he's not there. And then I go and I look in my bed where he should not be sleeping, and he's sleeping in my bed. And I'm like, you're on Xanax. Like, I know it right then. He was, and I just got mad and I kicked him out, and he didn't come back to the house after that. I was really upset about that because I worked so hard to separate myself from that, and he just brought it right back in with no hesitation. And then the last time I craved it, it was recently, actually. It was when we were about to release the album. I think I was just under a lot of stress, and like I didn't seek it out or anything. I just thought, wow, it'd be really, really nice to like, you know what I mean? To just like swallow a pill and let go right now. I snapped out of it pretty quick. I shouldn't be ashamed of myself for thinking that, you know what I mean? Like addicts go through that all the time, but I feel a little bit ashamed. I know that's wrong, but I do. And I think just like being open about that and saying that out loud makes it feel better.
Jack's rise to fame happened during the global pandemic that brought live music to a standstill in 2020. As a result, he hasn't had much time to interact with his fans face to face, but when touring resumes and he gets back out there will undoubtedly be people who know his story and ask him for some assistance. Now, we don't believe in giving out advice here at the show because we don't feel we can truly know somebody else's story and where they're coming from. But we do believe in the power of suggestion. So when fans ask Jack for help, this is what he will suggest.
I preach this in a lot of different situations, not even just addiction. Like, I'm really depressed, I'm really anxious, I'm in a bad place, whatever. Because I try to talk to people, and I do try to like reach out to people that reach out to me and give them a little bit of advice or say something to help them get set on the right path. But what I always say is find a routine. I live by routine, and it doesn't mean like every single day I do the exact same thing. I think people who are in the place that we were in hear routine, and that sounds terrible and boring and like suburban to them, you know what I mean? But it's not that. Like, my routine is just a structure. It just keeps me grounded. It makes me like, it gives me a checklist of things that I should get done every day, and that like really keeps me going.
I keep thinking about my time with Jack and how for someone so young, he's already led such a large life. With sobriety under control, a happy and supportive girlfriend, and a new record contract, I think we're going to be hearing a lot from Jack Kays in the years ahead, and I for one am very much looking forward to it. If you or someone you know is struggling with addiction, please seek help. The entire High Notes team is here to cheer you on and provide information, but you can also find a lot of help by contacting our friends at Heart Support and the Global Recovery Initiatives Foundation. There are also meetings and other programs in your area. If you don't know where to look, just ask. We'll help you. For High Notes, my name is James Shotwell. The show is edited and produced by Landon Defever, with additional help by our programming consultant, Laura Haggard. Our theme song was written by the band You, Me, and Everyone We Know, and our artwork was created by the great Ferran. There are more episodes coming soon. so I hope you'll stick around. And if you've already listened to them, thank you so much for your support. High Notes is created by people who want to make a difference in the world, and by spreading the word about our show, you're helping us achieve that goal. So thank you. We're here if you need anything, so please don't hesitate to reach out.